The Beef and Barnsey Show, brought to you by Bowlersmart.com, trusted by bowlers around the world since 2004. By Lightning Strikes Bowl, home of Bowlers Mart Pro Shop. By Platinum Ford, drive the difference. By Fire Lake Bowling Center, 24 state-of-the-art lanes. By True Grit Coatings, drive on our passion. By Roll to Grip, king of them all. By 900 Global, striking worldwide.
Good morning and welcome back to the Beef and Barnsey Show. And for a change, Beef's not carrying the load all by himself, at least not entirely. So today I am coming from Hammond, Indiana, and Stu is from Pflugerville. But as usual, I am joined by the unimitable Stuart Williams. How are you?
I'm doing okay. We're doing a wellness check. Are you okay?
It wasn't my best effort this week.
You
missed my first cut ever in the senior tour, and no one to blame but me. So,
oh come on, we've got a whole show to find other people to blame but you.
Well, I mean, there's always other people you could, but nonetheless, it was. So there's not much they can really put out where I don't have an advantage in some way of speed, rotation, string, whatever, and yeah, I kind of dropped the ball day one when they were a little easier, and
yes.
Yeah.
So real quick, shout out to Richard Barnum, one of the guys who bowls in my league. He said my background was boring. So could he make me a sign? And he did. I think it's quite pretty. So there she is, lit up. It might be a little off straight right now, but I did it quickly so we could get it there. All right.
I like it.
I guess we should start with this PBA League chat.
Yeah.
When is the PBA League draft?
The 18th, which is next Tuesday.
It's interesting. I think that they could have done this on Monday morning. It might have been interesting because a bunch of the guys are going to be together at the PBA.
Yeah, I believe
the LBC.
I believe this has a fair amount to do with Bowl TV's schedule. So,
yes, I was just.
In an ideal world, probably not the way they would go. I don't even know that it actually has a time.
It did.
2 Eastern. 2 Eastern. I'm sorry. So yeah, 1 in the afternoon. So
I can share my screen here. We can maybe go. Yeah, there we go. That's actually not bad. Right. So should we start off with where we think these rosters are going? It's always fun.
Yeah. I think we start with who's the keepers and who's going out.
So one would imagine that the first team, the Kingpins, I mean, I would guess that Pete's going to not be involved.
Yeah, Weber's basically retired from the national tour, so it's tough. And then Mikey Tang had a pretty tough year. It sounds like he is getting a job and will not be on tour for next year. And so Marshall, Darren, and Kyle would be the keepers there.
You would think. Moving along to your former franchise.
Yeah, I think the straightforward picks there are Jesper, Tom, and Vi.
I think that's pretty much how it's probably going to be.
Yeah, I don't think there's much question there.
Our team, Belmo, Buttroff, I guess, as Martin's not really bowled that much on the tour, he's probably being cut. And then I guess
the most often question I get asked is if I'm still bowling on tour. It appears that maybe I think you have 3 guys in the top 20, and that's pretty straightforward as well. Jason, Jacob, and Stewart will be the keepers there.
And then the only way in which that would be different is if Andrew decides that he thinks he's more likely to be able to regain me than regain you. So, Chicago Breeze. I mean, they were the Chicago Hitmen, and Dom campaigned very strongly that he didn't think that was a particularly appropriate nickname given the scenarios at the minute. So I'm not sure he was down with the Chicago Breeze, but that's what they've got. Just quickly, we got a super chat come in here from Eli. He says, I feel like Simo and EJ on the same team is busted. Yeah, they don't seem to do great together.
At times it's just a little more competition maybe than instead of teamwork perhaps, but it's hard to say. I mean, not there, not inside the locker room, so to speak, and so I don't know that dynamic, but it's an awful lot of talent to not do better than they do.
And then friend of the show, Glenn says, good morning, guys. I will be ordering the Summit and the Gold using your link. Well, thank you very much. Good luck with those. I appreciate the super chat this morning. So anyway, where were we? So we got to the Chicago Breeze.
Dom is the automatic keeper there. And then you got, I think Jake will probably end up back in. Eye of the beholder, I guess, with the next 3 guys. Tom is probably the most accomplished. Maldonado has been hotter of late. Well, I guess Nick Pate's probably been the hottest of late of the 3. But
yeah, that team's interesting.
It's probably the most questioned. I mean, you could literally keep any of the next 4 guys on a given week have been very successful.
I feel like Smallwood's going to get kept for sure.
He's been a long time piece of that squad, and he is a good team guy. He's a low friction guy for sure.
But yeah, that's definitely the one that's most up for debate. Motown, I would think it'd be EJ, Simo, and Kaven.
Yep.
Waco Wonders. I mean, that could go in any direction. Oof. I would think the middle 3 bowlers.
BJ, Thomas Larson, and Jason Sterner as the other 2 have basically retired from the tour.
I would hope that
Johnny and Parker's relationship, I think there's more than a small possibility that Parker could get kept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Milwaukee Pounders. I would suspect that they would keep the top 3, Rash, Simonelli, and Dick Allen. I don't think that
most likely,
certainly not. Anthony didn't bowl great this year. Although I haven't actually seen Chapman for forever, it feels like, even though we're living in the same state, he hasn't been around at all.
There's a scenario where you could pick Chapman and instead of Richie, maybe, but
I don't.
Given Richie's history in the event, I think that's a tough one.
The Las Vegas High Rollers. This is an interesting one because Russo had a better season than both Andrew and Frankie. Well, probably than AJ also, but definitely than the first 2. So that's an interesting one also. I feel like he'll probably end up keeping the 3 righties at the top there, AJ, Andrew, and Francois. But Russo wouldn't be a no way.
Good point. Adam says, what if Simo and Belmo on the same team? They don't play lanes all that much together, but I mean, EJ, Samo, and Belmo have kind of been the three-headed monster tour in recent times. So yeah, I think Norm has already said what he wants to do there.
He's going to keep Ogle, right?
Right.
So it's going to be Tommy Vaughan
too, and then he's out.
And then the old Portland Lumberjacks. This is another interesting one. I think if they were, if this was 100% cutthroat, I think it would be Troop, Prather, and Hanrahan. Despite how much Wes has done for the team in the 10th frames and such.
Yeah. There's a leadership quality he brings to that team that solidifies. But if this was a Belichick team, they would be going younger.
Thanks for your service. So that's kind of where we're at with that. And then current list of eligible players, top 75. So
that's an order there of points from last year, I believe, right?
I believe so, yes. So if we just quickly go up, we ended up cutting 20 people from up here. So we've got to figure out, like, of the 20 people that we cut, Pete is one who isn't really bowling. Brandon Novak is another one who didn't really bowl very much on the tour. 2. Martin is another one that didn't necessarily bowl that much on the tour this year, so that's 3. In our eyes, we were cutting Walter and Parker, so they're 2 guys that didn't really bowl that much on the tour, so that's 5.
Everybody there, Norm.
Yeah, so
is 6. So
yeah, so 6 people. So there's, in our mind, there's definitely 6 additional people at least who are coming in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, I hadn't thought about it that way, but that makes perfect sense. That there's 6 people definitely getting drafted off the eligible list at minimum.
Yes. This is just to put in perspective for people who are talking about, snubs and not snubs and whatever else. So
yeah,
the first 4 were quite a bit ahead. Let me just pull up the PBA points list.
Casey asks if the coaches, managers are there for show, or they offer some insight. It does vary from team to team. Some managers have a ton and are very active. Some guys set the lineups only. Some guys pick the teams basically on their own, and some get a lot of input from their teams. So it's very much kind of like every other sport. Some coaches are the alpha dogs on their team, and some of them will follow the direction of the strongest players. Yes, I definitely believe McCune will make a team.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting to.
AJ is local to me. So, what's that?
That's kind of a little bit what I was getting to here, though. The top 4 are in the top 22. Like Sean Lavery's 22nd. And then Justin Knowles is 29th on points.
I didn't realize he was that high. But
and then Richie Teese is 39th, just for perspective.
Uh-huh.
And then let's see where Hess is. I think he's like 47th or something. 46th. So Zach Wilkins is 50th. Right?
Okay.
So I would say that the people below that are probably a little bit of trouble getting picked.
You have some wild cards there. You have You have a couple left-handers who Anthony Nair is a massively strong strike ball and those kind of things. Brandon Ronk's been pretty decent this year. Cortez Schenk, if you're maybe trying to hit on someone for the future. Michael Davidson's had some good tournaments at the back half of the year. And Dombrowski, who barely bowls, always bowls pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
We got a super chat come in here. How often do you guys use axis tilt? Do you use your fingers, thumb, or inside of the elbow to point to the target in the forward swing? I basically don't use tilt at all because I just don't know. EJ talks about it a lot, but I don't know anybody who consistently can really manipulate their tilt. It's a very difficult thing. And I think a lot of people talk about tilt to make themselves sound very smart, but I don't know that there is a direct correlation between tilt, no tilt, 1 week to the next.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to diagnose because it's also very hard to see as going in a lane. You can see axis rotation pretty easy. And that's the other thing. When I first came on tour, we said tilt and we meant axis rotation. We were using the wrong term so I do think the two things are very tied together. It's, to my knowledge, virtually impossible to change your tilt without changing your axis rotation. And so by and large, we just, and you have to change your rotation more than, this is for pinball. Yeah. You have to change your rotation quite a bit more than your tilt will change correspondingly. So, guys do use a lot of axis rotation, and some guys change their tilt along with it, but I'm not sure it's because of tilt. I think they just change the rotation. And as far as your second part of your question, do you use the fingers, thumb, or inside the elbow to point at your target? I think it's different for a lot of guys. I'll go through stretches where I'm using the front of my shoulder. I'll also go through some stretches where I'm using my forearm a lot to go through my target.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think about that unless I'm bowling bad. About which direction I'm. The only time I really ever focus on something towards my target is when we're bowling on a short pattern and I'm throwing at the 10 pin and I really focus on sending my ring finger at the target to make sure I really get the ball going end over end. Because if you kind of like get round one a little bit, you can miss those spares pretty good. So,
well, once again, I'm getting called out for something I said off the cuff here. So Justin Knowles joining us today, just flying under the radar. Well, maybe not for much longer.
We're actually going to get back up to that in a second. Hey guys, I would still state Mike Olby if I needed one strike. I mean, I watch Mike bowl nationals.
Maybe not anymore.
Maybe not this minute.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say you would still take Mike Olby in his prime against the guys now in their prime, which would be more than fair. It's a little bit like the old Michael Jordan when they said, "Who's better, you or LeBron?" And he said, "Well, I guess he is. I'm 60."
Yeah, Mike doesn't bowl so much, but yeah, across the board, when you talk to the previous generations, they say he was good for the money. He was not the guy you wanted to be sitting on the bench and he needed a strike to win. It wasn't going to turn out very good for you very often.
And then he says, any advice for me to quit throwing helicopters? I'm not really sure what that means. I imagine you mean throwing your elbow around, and Chris is a big exponent of keeping that right shoulder back.
Yep. Keeping your shoulder back will keep your elbow back. And if your shoulder's forward, it's very difficult to keep your elbow in. So it's all tied together. True. I think, yeah.
He He says, my ball spins like a helicopter. That's usually because you get your elbow out early and you get around the top of it.
Your hands on top of it. So elbow in, shoulder back, hand underneath, and keep it there all the way through. Stay a little taller. So,
yeah. We've got a question from our friend from Dallas. Chris says, CB, can you discuss the geophysics of core shape and translate that into deciding your ball of choice? Thanks in advance. I think he should have wrote, I'll hang up and listen offline.
Yeah, no doubt. The geo, that goes back to a conversation he overheard on the concourse last week, where the guy came up and asked me those questions. And then as we began to speak, it became a little more obvious that he was maybe not high enough level to where those mattered.
Oh, I thought that it became clear that he was just messing with you.
No, but CT was after that, 100%.
Nathan Ball should be picked. Yes, I think that there is more than a couple of teams who are looking at Nathan. If you don't get retained by the LAX, which team would you rather play for? This is always a sketchy question. Myself, personally, I've always had a decent amount of success bowling team with Dom or Jesper. But, you know, I'm versatile. So,
yeah. And from my side, obviously, I have connections with Mark Baker and the core of that Adam Splitters team. It might be fun to bowl alongside Anthony and EJ, which we've done before with the Weber Cup, and we had some success that way. So maybe
I was about to say it's never it never feels like it would be too much of a trouble to bowl with the best two bowls in the world.
Yeah, those two and Kevin. Well, if I had to bowl with Tommy and Bill again, I'd live. I'd be okay with it.
Tim Pfeiffer is the ultimate sleeper pick.
Yeah, as in you'd be dead. Is that what you mean?
How many new faces do you think we'll see in the league? I would say probably 8.
It's a minimum of 5 if Parker gets kept, like we spoke about earlier, just because of the people who are actually no longer active on the tour. But realistically, I think it's probably closer to 8, 9, and could go up with eye of the beholder. You never know how people see other players.
I have another interesting one. There are a lot of lefties in the top few, like Justin Knowles, Mike Martell, Graham Farr, Kim Bollaby, Brandon Runk, Wesley Lowe, Naya. So there's about 7 or 8, right? Historically, lefties have been in pretty high demand. Craig Vai says Graham Farr has been bowling great recently.
He has, and more than just recently. Now he's on a little 6-8 month run of but not enough to get above Justin Knowles.
Hi, Sim.
Hey.
But anyway,
man, we're joined by the good and the great today. Got lots of people interested.
Simonelli says there's never been 2 lefties on the same team from his recollection. I feel like one time there has.
There definitely has been. I was on one of them.
Yeah. McNeil bowled with Svensson.
With Jesper. We drafted both of those guys the same year, and most people thought Jesper was the crazy pick at the time, ironically.
Yeah. It hasn't happened very many times, though.
No.
But the point I was getting round to quickly was picking a lefty, and it's funny that Simonelli's on chatting. You might only be picking them for 1 year, because with the rule changes, that's going to change a lot of things. And some of the players who take advantage are going to have, they're going to have to do some different things, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're not, but it feels like they are. So all of this might be upside down after that.
Yeah, there's a little change of direction, but just for a second, we'll play a hypothetical. What would the 8 cities for PBA League teams? I would say they're places that have been hosts for quite a while. You'd make them hubs.
Well, Indy.
Yeah.
I think I'd still have one in Vegas.
Yeah. South Point team or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
So that'd be 2 for without even thinking about it. Obviously, you're going to keep Portland. So that's
another
Akron would be 4. I think that there could be an argument in recent times for a Springfield team, possibly.
Wichita team.
Wichita.
Perhaps. If Lubbock would have stayed on the schedule, they'd been one of our longest players until this year.
Yeah.
Jackson.
Yes.
A Michigan team, basically. You might call it Michigan instead of Jackson, but
yes. I mean, you could have it as Detroit because Thunderball.
Sure.
So a city that I think would be on there, but obviously we've gone in a different direction now, would have been Columbus. I think that they would have really been into it.
Right.
Somebody's saying Jersey. Well,
Carolier, yeah. If we started going back there again, I prefer the scorers get moved off the approach if we're going to bowl there on a regular basis. But
Larry says we should have a Pflugerville team.
Do you think the PBA League has the right amount of teams, or would you want to see some more expansion? I will probably argue against my own well-being in this thing, but I thought it worked a lot better at 8 than it did at 10.
I actually think that we should have expanded rosters and less teams.
8 with 6 guys.
I don't think we should have less people. I just think that we should have 8 teams, and I think that you should be bowling every week towards the PBA League, and the PBA League be part of the schedule. So
at a date of the schedule, maybe.
Yes, or practice day or whatever.
Practice day and team is like the first day.
So that is kind of the direction that I envision it. Doing it that direction. So you could have 10-man rosters, or some, maybe not 10, but something like that. And then you could pick the guys, if we're bowling on a short pattern, maybe you'd want to use your 2 lefties.
Sure.
Exact. You know what I mean? Something in that direction.
You'd have some flexibility to have packages and things.
And if guys were injured or not bowling so well, you could go in that direction also. Oh, sorry. Adam coming off the top rope. You think you're bowling the PBA League, Bonzi?
I don't think he meant it in the. That's what I think. I'm reading it different on there. It's a fair question, but I think there's a 50-50 I'll get drafted.
We got one more super chat just come in. What were you actually looking at just before that?
I don't remember. Okay. Here you go. Yeah, too many old timers got retained last year. I want to thank Martin for not naming me directly. It's time for Pete, Walter, and Parker to step aside. That's up to the managers. They can do what they want to do, and really, there's some value to some of those guys for sure. I don't expect Pete to get kept this year. Last year didn't go as well. Collusion right here on Beef and Barnesy. Yeah. Nope. No tampering rules to worry about here. I agree. Sean Lavery should get picked this year. He had a breakthrough season, and along with Jeffrey Young, says the same thing. I believe that's right. Somebody here asks if Sim is happy about the rule changes. The rule changes being the 78 hardness with urethanes. Yeah, Patrick, we're talking Akron. I think more people know Akron than Fairlawn, but we had a mock draft the one time, and Mike Flanagan did draft 5 left-handers onto his team, which was interesting what it looked like, and who knows, it might be that might be the right thing.
Real quick, did you cover Anthony's question?
I don't know, what was Anthony's question? No, I didn't get to it yet. There we go.
I'm still wondering why not have the teams do some sort of exhibition in their host cities. It would probably go a long way to getting people invested. Yes, I'm not sure it'd go very much to getting Silver Lake invested in bowling.
Yeah, it's probably time for Silver Lake to relocate to a population with a bowling center. But yeah,
and
if we could name at the time,
if we could be the Golden State X, that would be great.
Yeah, originally that was a Chris Paul team when he played with the Clippers, and so it all kind of made sense.
Yeah,
the original owners, which didn't have to pay anything, which shockingly, when they didn't have to pay anything, they didn't care. That model didn't really work, and we can thank our previous regime before Tom for that one. So
yeah, I don't think that you're crying yourself to sleep over the new rule changes there. Yeah. Yes, Dan. Draft Days, Elite Flooring, big friend of the show and a sponsor of the Lavery Boys and Chappie. So maybe you can tell us where Chappie's at.
And going back to Anthony's, potentially this is kind of what we're talking about. If the cities were named after places that are regular hosts, it would make a lot of sense there would be places we would be at as well, and you could tie some things in maybe in the off season and do some things like that. So
I don't even necessarily think it needs to be that. I just think that if we pick cities that actually were on the schedule, and I like, so for example, Oklahoma's been on the schedule almost regularly the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Now that if they decide to commit, because they own Wichita, so they could commit to Wichita.
Yeah, if they want.
They could. We go to Indy for the U.S. Open each year, so that's 3. I don't think it's out of the stretch for them to be able to have a tournament in Vegas every year, so that's 4. You start to build it up pretty quickly. Like they want it in Waco. Waco has a bowling center.
They do.
A Bolero center. Mm-hmm. So if they go in that direction, they can have Waco. Like I would prefer them to have a Dallas or a Austin team because they have pretty nice centers in both Dallas and Austin that would host centers that could host tournaments pretty easily. You go in the TOC every year in Fairlawn. That might be the only one that's a little tricky because there might be guys on the roster who aren't necessarily in the TOC. But again, that's why having the larger rosters, if guys aren't around.
Right.
So that's the way I see it. So
I think we forget sometimes not everybody knows how this thing works. So Big Kahuna, is the league by invitational only, or is there a way to qualify in the draft via tournament or whatnot? People who have been drafted before are eligible regardless of their status. And then the top 75 in points are eligible. Each team keeps 3, drops 2, and then you have a snake draft in reverse order of finish. So the 10th place team last year will draft first, and then they draft 20th. You could argue whether that's the best way or not, but that's mostly the way it's been done. And it's Portland, when they were the Jackrabbits, were not good for a long time, and then they were. So they made enough good picks over time to end up being pretty dominant force and a favorite now every year.
Ryan, who is a frequent super chatter, so thanks a lot, says, we'll rewatch later. Just wanted to tell you guys hi from the poolside in Key, Florida. bowling Emerald Coast with the Thibodaux, Louisiana crew this weekend. Got a fresh ruby ready.
I didn't know that thing still existed. I bowled the Emerald Coast back when I was in college. That's how long ago that was. Jim Welch used to drive a group of us over there. Holy cow. That was a minute ago. That was a cool tournament. Although really it was just a vacation and we both good enough to pay for the vacation, but nice. Dave Campbell says should be 2 teams of players not picked and allow us to vote them onto a team, even if they are old guys. What if each team? What if PBA females were in the PBA and qualified to be on a PBA team? Oh yeah,
what if each team had to have a female? Yeah.
So we did for a while. There's been 3 different ones that qualified on their own merits.
Yes.
Liz, Kelly, and Danielle, and all fared well on teams and all did. And once they stopped bowling on tour, then that didn't happen anymore. So.
Okay. I'm not sure no. It's the PBA League. Why would we have a youth team? We'd have to sign waivers for them to be able to bowl.
The whole tour has to go through Safe Sport. Well, Craig knows more than I do, as usual. Silver Lake has Pickwick Bowl and ice rink, and the family has been trying to sell that to condos for years. So
that's funny.
There you go. I was watching an Old Brunswick World Team Challenge from 1994, and I was using an AMF Black Ninja.
That wasn't a bad one.
This is why we haven't seen Chappie. He went back home for a while, so.
Yeah, he's missed quite a few tournaments.
With his fiancée, so. Let's see.
Stephanie says she'd love to see Verity on, as would many. Yeah. If she comes and bowls on the national tour and she qualifies, I'm sure she's got the opportunity to get picked. I mean, I'd like to see Choi Bok-um on the team, but he ain't bowling on the PBA tour, so he isn't getting picked.
Yeah, I think there are guys around the world we definitely say would be strong candidates to be on teams for sure, or in many cases perhaps better than who's there, but it just
the draft is 2 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, and it is on Bowl TV. Whoa, yeah, it's on Bowl TV. So, so to answer your question, no, I don't believe it's on YouTube. It might be on YouTube later on.
Motown did, but they had to draft at the very end, so they got the 21st pick. They didn't make. I think if you kept 2 and got to pick at the beginning, that would change a few team strategy for sure. But
it may well,
but they don't. So. Oh, the Emerald, Pace, Florida now. Fort Walton shut down in 2019.
Oh boy. Would Choi have success on the PBA? I've seen international players find out how good they're not out there. I've seen quite a few international players show how good they are out there, though. I think if you look down the list, there's quite a lot of non-Americans who are pretty good.
I think you've seen both over the years. There's been a few surprises, but it's the same. I think we all thought, by all accounts, Cameron Doyle, Wesley Lowe, and Greg Young were all going to be, really good professionals. And currently Wesley's the only one still on tour, 4 years later. So it's always hard to predict. Paul Moore won everything in Europe and struggled. So.
I just think that There's a lot of guys not named Shota from Japan and Korea that hop on it pretty good and could be impressive additions to the league. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I find it hard to believe that if he bowled out on the national tour, that John Woo Park wouldn't be a solid guy. I think that any of the Korean guys would probably be pretty useful because I think it's kind of been shown over the last 3 years that revs matter, and those guys have really high rev rates. I think that lower rev rate guys overall would probably struggle. Who have success elsewhere, you have to be really smart and really understand the way the lanes break down, I think, to be a non-high rev rate guy. But like, for example, Santu has come out on the PBA and has had a lot of success. And I'd argue he's actually had more success on the PBA tour than he's had in Europe. So,
yeah,
I mean, he's more of a factor on the PBA tour than he is on the European tour. So,
who's that?
Santu.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, to say that, I think it's just environmental. And I think the guys who have struggled in the past, probably Paul as an example, are guys that weren't necessarily higher rev rate players. And I think that right now, I would back any bowler that I thought was pretty good that had a 500 rev rate. I think they'd all be fine.
Environmentally, I think it's the biggest change is that, and there's a learning curve when you get around that many other players that do that. But around the world, rev rates are up, and talent is up, and overall competition is more level than it's been at the top end of whether it's an Asian tour, a European tour, or an American tour. So,
possibly,
yeah,
possibly true.
Yeah. They haven't been as good in recent years as they were before. The urethane thing, they kind of led the charge on, and as everybody else has gotten better at it, those advantages have gone away, and I think they've struggled to separate as much.
I think the other thing is they break them down differently over there, or what? Yeah, there just isn't the same depth of guys who have as high a rev rate.
What about a national drawing for an amateur bowler that meets any requirements being able to bowl? Yeah, sure, as long as they're a PBA member in the top 75. So if there's an amateur bowler that fits that, absolutely. Great point. I understand the whole everybody needs to have and everybody has to be eligible and all that, but can at some point we talk about this is a professional tour and we have to stop giving money away that professional bowlers don't have to people who don't bowl on the professional tour? I mean, if you're not EJ, Simo, Belmo, or Buttriff, those guys made $1.2 million or $1.2 million. Okay.
Yeah.
There's 2 million total, and the other 78 shared the other $1 million, trying to make a living. Already support McKinley Brannigan's, scholarship fund through Friday Night Fanatics every week. I don't need to do it another way.
So, if European tour players couldn't do well on the PBA tour, then the US would win every Weber Cup, and they didn't. Didn't Denmark have 2 tour winners during COVID, and Sweden and Finland as well? Yeah, there is a lot of people.
Yeah, Europe has, they broke through. I guess Mika was probably the first to break through, and then and it did snowball. We already knew how much talent there was. Had Tomas Leanderson come over and bowled, full time, he would have won. I have no doubts. We saw Torrey come over and I don't think he won, but he made shows and had plenty of success, and
he made a lot of American women very happy.
Yeah, for an evening. Yes. So Asia just basically needed a guy like Shota or somebody who's one of their best players to kind of break through and show, hey, it's not that hard to go to someplace different and be there for a while, then that's a huge part of the challenge that nobody talks about.
Well, the other part of it is like Korea has their like national league and stuff, so all those players have contracts. All of the non KPBA players have contracts with house teams, so they get paid to bowl for these teams in the league. So it's kind of like, I mean, yeah, it's not everybody's dream. This is what I think a lot of people couldn't quite get their head around with live golf.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't Cameron Smith's dream to live in America 9 months a year.
Right.
Like, it might be ours, but it just isn't his. So, like, he just doesn't care about that. The PGA Tour isn't the be all and end all for him. Maybe he wasn't the person who dreamed, like Justin Thomas or Jordan Spieth, of playing on the PGA Tour every week.
Yeah. It's very underrated how hard it is to live. You know, I could see going to Europe myself. It's a little easier transition to go to Europe and bowl for 4 to 6 weeks at a time. I know lots of people. We can get around. I can get some help getting to and from places the first time until you kind of get acclimated. Going to Asia is a completely different thing. You have a language barrier. And let's face it, if you're Asia coming to America, we're lousy hosts. We're not going to go look after you. We're not going to make sure your hotels and things are taken care of like they do when we go there. And to be there for 8 or 10 weeks at a time.
It's tough.
It's special. That's why nobody had done it really full time. Mats Carlson did it a long time ago. Then Mika was one of the first guys to really get in.
I mean, Amleto's the first real international guy who was.
And he went from South America. And I was speaking more from Europe.
No, I was just, I get it. I was just picking, like, I think that Amleto's been in the States for so long that people kind of forget that
he was there at 17.
Yeah. And, he was a 2-time player of the year. And
and broken, and he had basically the same issues as somebody from Asia came. It's a second language, and he was on his own.
Yeah. Basically.
And that was a dog-eat-dog world then. That was PTQs and all kinds of things every week trying to get through. So,
is Martin Larson one of the best players ever playing long-term on the PBA to haven't won a title? I'm sure. I think that AJ would fight him for that. Johnson.
As currently, Martin's won a ton of things internationally that were PBA titles at different times, just not the times that he won it. So I think in most guys' minds on the tour that he's an equivalent to a PBA titleist, probably multi-time titleist. And now in his 40s, it's injuries are, when he's healthy, he's awfully good. In a team environment, he's always been great. So whether it's Weber Cup, Team Sweden, or the PBA League.
All right, let's quickly just spin back to this. I'm going to we'll cut through the fluff a little bit. Okay. So we counted 6, right?
Yeah. And that's if Parker is not kept.
So I think we need 7. Right?
Well, that's 6. 6 and I think 6 means Parker was dropped. We can't.
Yeah. But all I was saying is 6, like pretty much definites who don't bowl is what I really meant.
Right.
I think I need 7 or 8. I'm going to pick 7 people who I think are going to come into the PBA League. How about that?
That's a tough list to pick 7 from, too.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go with McCune, Cooley, Keiko, and Lavery Spa. I think those 4. I think Justin Knowles is 5. So that's 5. I think that Nathan has a good chance. And then I think just let me spin up for the draft order a second. Because that's another thing that people have got to take into consideration.
Yeah, what's your team dynamic? What's your team makeup? How many retirees do you have? Do you not to how many right-handers.
This is why the PBA is nonsense. So again, they've gone back to the snake draft. Why? Why are we doing a snake draft?
Yeah, it favors the team.
Not fantasy football.
Yeah. Yep.
But like, for example, like Las Vegas High Rollers have Ildemaro on the roster. And they've had Richie on the roster in the past. Like, if they were picking in the last couple of picks, I think that makes, more sense for them to come back. But when you're picking with the 13th pick, not the 20th pick, that's different. So let me just quickly spin back to this. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Bohr, Farr, Knowles, Spar, Keiko, Cooley, and McCune. That's the 7, I think.
Okay.
It might be more. It might not. Norm might decide that he wants to try and pick up Cortez Shank or somebody of that ilk.
Yeah, I think there'll be some more. I can see a guy, I can see somebody picking up Nair. I could see Cortez Shank getting bet on as a come through. I could see Patrick Dombrowski, who bowls very minimal tournaments and still qualifies. All those are strong possibilities. So McCune, I think, is the slam dunk of the draft. I don't think this is necessarily the way I would go, but I think it's very possible for a couple of teams how they fall. I do think Justin Knowles has a pretty good chance. I think Sean Lavery has an excellent chance. I'm going to skip around here a little bit, I think.
Just tell me, do you need me to move down?
No. I do think while Cooley's afraid of getting snubbed again, I don't think he will be. I think he's stayed up towards the top.
I feel like the top 4 are almost locks.
Well, I can see a thing because Thomas Keiko is so quiet that he gets overlooked.
Yeah.
And while his skill set on the eyeball test doesn't wow you, the fact that he makes it through and then makes the finals basically every week it's crazy. It's a little bit hard to explain, to be honest. And so I don't know if people understand him very well. And he's pretty quiet. So I could see him getting skipped, but I don't, like I said, I don't think that's what I would do, but I could see it happening. Joichi.
Thanks for the super chat, Matt. He's saying, what about Teese? I think Teese did really well in the PBA League when he was in.
Yeah, I think he's definitely got a spot with it. Like you said, I think a team like Amleto's team where he bowled so good and he was such an emotional guy. That's become, I wouldn't have thought so a year ago, but Zach has improved a lot. Zach bowled
like I say, Zach's bowled really well a bunch of times.
Yeah.
He's another one who suffers from not being in the top 50, so having to PTQ every week.
Right. And to finish where he did, PTQing is pretty strong.
Yeah.
So McCune, Cooley, I'm going to go Lavery, Knowles, Cortez, and Dombrowski.
Okay. You're really out there. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And there's lots of people in the middle there. And like I said, Graham Fall is both great. I think, there is a fit for him as well if it falls the right way. And I think we could be a couple people short. There might be some people that you never know how those relationships go. Sometimes absence does not make the heart grow fonder. And
100%. Yeah. Like,
yeah, you pick somebody new and you go, oh, you know what? I kind of liked it better when we had Richie T. So I liked it better when Richie was on our team. And
I mean,
so you never know.
We've done this 3 times now, I think, like actually done the draft. And a couple of times we got close with a few of the picks, but then like some of the picks that people make, you just wouldn't think of. Like nobody in a million years would have guessed that Timmy was going to pick Arturo. When he picked Arturo, I didn't go, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. It made sense to me because Timmy has a pretty long-term relationship with Arturo.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't necessarily have been like the first person I'd have thought of.
All right. I heard Chris saying grandpa, not grandpa. I don't think grandpa is a lock, but I think he's plenty well enough. I would actually feel, I guess I wouldn't be surprised, but I think he is a definite, he'll get looked at by at least 3 or 4 teams. Some teams don't want more than one left-hander, and they have one. Some teams may try and load up on that play.
It's also a little bit difficult to draft the PBA League because they don't always do everything the same. So I know there's been a couple of years where we sort of like based our team a little bit on the fact that we were sure that the league was going to go a certain way, and then we bowled on the other side.
Right. Yeah. Maldonado on one side of the building is dominant, and on the other side he's good. But Smallwood, when we first made these first drafts, we were bowling it at the Thunderbolt in the arena, and he's crazy good in there.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, it's been a good show, but I need to start packing. I need to figure out the balls I'm going to take up to the LBC. But 100% Beef Stew shirts are back. You can check them out on coolwit.com. They only have the one color on the main page. If you go and just search for me, if you click, they've got the red one. The red is always the best. So
it turns out pretty good.
Yeah, check that out.
You can also have my jerseys are on there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a special. And say Barnesy 10 or Beef Stew 10 to get a discount on either one of those. You can go to beefandbarnesy.com and check out what's on there right now. I think we're in the process of updating and adding things.
Yeah, that process hasn't really started yet. I was sorting out jerseys for Lucy this week. But yeah, there's a bunch more content I've got to get up. Hopefully I'll get some time when I'm up in Milwaukee to do it. But thank you, Martin. Yeah, we had a good time with it. I hope you guys were entertained. There isn't necessarily a whole lot to talk about outside of bowling balls at the minute. So this was a nice break. We probably won't have a show on Tuesday because I'm flying back Tuesday, having bowled Monday in the LBC,
and I'm bowling the World Series for the Dodgers.
But we might have like some sort of reaction show on Thursday. And what is the date on Thursday? Thursday, it'll be the 20th. So yeah. So I think that we'll probably go in that direction. The next set of ball videos will be around the end of July. So Christine Azcona says, last guys you predicted me in and I wasn't picked, leave me out so I may have a chance. I hope so, bro. Hope so. All right. Well, thanks for watching. I'm going to
bless you.
So another shout out to my friend Rich. Thanks for making the sign. I'll move the camera. There you go. It's awesome. I appreciate you. I might even see if I can get him to do a beef stew one for right here. So yeah, bit of fun. Added some interest to the back wall. So thanks for watching. I think I'm going to take this ball with me just quick, because Chris bowled 300 with it, so it's got to be the ball, right?
Zen Gold Label. Check out those reviews on Heath and Barnsey on YouTube.
And you can also check out Ryan's as well if you want a two-handed perspective.
Yes.
On Barnsey.
There's a few. I think this one rolls pretty good. I got a couple of them now. They're both in play. So
okay, good.
Pretty pleased. So as usual, between now and the next time you see us, please support the sponsors that support us. Easy for me to say. Storm, Rotogrip, 900 Global, Cool, Bowlers Mart, Firelight Bowling Center, Lightning Strikes, and Platinum Ford. Shout out to my guy, Steve Anderson. Keep fighting the good fight. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. God bless.
See you later, guys. Thanks for tuning in.